New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hello and welcome to Rockin the Love.
Rock on! I'm Gil.
And I'm Robyn.
And we are happy to be with you today and excited that it is a Wednesday in March, the first Wednesday, March 2025.
And this is what we've signed up for.
Yeah, it's just an assignment.
So here we are, ready to rock the love with you.
Yes, indeed. So we are officially between birthdays.
We are.
Yes.
I was just thinking 10 more shopping days till your birthday.
Yeah. So Robyn's birthday was the 26th of February and mine is the 15th of March. And there we go, which could explain a lot if you're into astrology at all, because it makes us both Pisces. So
anything you want to do is fine.
That's right.
We'll swim along with that.
Let us figure out how to make this work.
What do you want? No, what do you want? Anyway, this is not an astrology show. This is a story about a married couple. It's us. And we're here just talking about relationship and how no matter what relationship you're in, it's all about the love. It doesn't matter whether it's your health or your finances or your marriage or your family or your spouse.
It's all about the love.
Yeah, it's all about the
love. Love is all there is. Love is all there is. No, don't sing.
No singing.
I always get in trouble for that. I think it's because I don't sing that well, but I'm not sure.
Okay, so today what we're going to talk about is
that still small voice.
The still small voice. Who is that? Who is that?
What is that?
And how do you know when to listen?
Why do we even talk about it? Who? Where did it come from? Where,
Yeah, so we're gonna do that. But before we do that, we'd love it if you just clicked on those social media buttons and gave us a little heart and all of those good things. Let social media know that we're here and we're relevant. And you love us.
At the very least, that we're here. We just need some affirmation that we're actually here. So, so we want to touch on the week somehow. We touch on some of the highlights of news or whatever of the week. I think it's a fascinating week in terms of having the big State of the Union address, which was so highly not appreciated by so many people, and not even participated in. And that's the first time I've ever seen that a senator or House representative got kicked out of a State of the Union address.
I didn't see. I know nothing about the State of the Union.
Well, I know nothing really, but that's the one thing I do know.
I was told not to watch it, and so I didn't.
And I haven't, but I saw that a gentleman got kicked out, and who was one of the senators. Apparently, he was a Democrat, so it was okay, to boot him. It
is. What's fascinating to me is really just the inhumanity to man that's occurring. Just really so much differentiation and
so much power struggle, really. It's all about being powerful and having something over someone else. And so Therefore, there's no compassion. There's none of that. It's only about what will get me ahead and what will make you less than. Those two items. And I think that's the frustrating part and the sad part, because that's not who we are. That's not who we are as humans. That's not who we are as a country. But it is exactly, we are exactly realigning the country in terms of who we stand with in the world. We're about to become part of the axis of evil. I think, what we've referred to as that in the past, we're suddenly going to join up and be a part of it. And we are touting we have senators touting the fact that Russia is more tolerant of Christianity than Ukraine, and that they are actually supporting Christianity and Ukraine is not. And it's like, yeah, and the dictator lives in Ukraine, not in Russia. And you can just go on and on with this. But it mirrors what we have in our leadership, and that is whatever fingers are being pointed are actually telling the truth about what is, and that's what's happening.
Yeah, that's definitely what's happening. Is that the other thing that I think is happening? I mean, even just when you were explaining it, or just saying that, I got lost in it, and I think it's that chaoticness. Like when I talk to clients, and I just hung up with somebody that's like, I can't anchor. There's so much happening. I can't give my attention here, and I want to have a practitioner appointment, but I can't afford to go to the practitioner, and and there's all these things that are pulling at us based on what's going on in the world, that chaotic energy,
Yeah.
Did you go away? Where'd you go?
Oh, I can't talk about it right now. Just can't talk about it.
Okay, so
I told you I'd have to kill you. That would not be right.
All right. Okay. All right. If you're joining us, you are joining us at Rockin the Love, and we're glad to have you. Just kind of catching up on the week before we go to our good news. And then we're going to talk about that still small voice and what that is, and when to listen, or I don't know. We'll see what happens. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, that's the week, really.
Yeah.
That's the week, I think.
And I think probably we're seeing it reflected in other places, and people's emotions and stuff are running away and struggling with how to be with it. And I think some people are getting sucked in by it. And, I think it's probably showing up in some surprising places right now.
Yeah. And I think it's going to continue.
Yeah.
There's no breakaway plan from this.
No.
So anyway, but amidst all of this, there is good news happening in the world. There's so much good news that I brought in a good news expert to do a good news story today. So I am going to yield my position to our fabulous producer, Michael Mangus. If you can name his show in the chat, we will give you a prize. Just saying. His show that airs Friday night at 7 p.m.
Yeah, and you know what? I had the shot already ready for Gil instead of for me.
Yeah, so go ahead.
Oh, okay.
I'm just bringing.
So I'm going to go ahead. So Madam Chairperson, I'd like to yield my time to Reverend Dr. Gil, and he will yield time back to me towards the end.
All right. Well, we'll see if you don't get kicked out of this meeting.
All right.
All right. So tell us what's good, Gil.
All right. Let me tell you what's good. This is a kind of an interesting story. Been some research done on some humpback whales. I've been watching them, listening to them, observing. And what has been found is that the number of songs that they sing, the different songs that they sing, increases as their food source increases. So over this period of time they've been being researched, they've doubled the number of unique songs that they sing. And during that time, their food source has greatly increased. Now, I thought this was really interesting because I think it goes right to Maslow, right? I mean, when certain things are met, when certain things are met, then people or animals or anything can move into the different levels of expression. If all we're doing is trying to scratch out a living or find a way to survive, we're not making a lot of music. We're not telling stories. We're not writing books. We are scratching away. And it's interesting to see that that's mirrored in animals, that there's some level at which that's the true. As there's time freed up because they don't have to look as hard or they don't have to stress as much about finding it or whatever it is, that they're able to do more creative stuff. I just thought it was really fascinating.
It is fascinating. And it also, it also goes to the story we heard about the Reverend Michael tells about the cells and the when you're happy, there's cells in your body that play a tune. And when you're not happy or at discord, it's not.
And the tune tends to be in minor
that
the vibration that we're vibrating at not only goes up, but it also attunes to a positive musical tone rather than a minor tone, which tends to elicit
like
sadness and grief in us.
So I say that chord. Just because it's similar in that when they're happy and singing in a different way, then the food sources is more productive. Like everything is in accordance with that.
So it's probably more of a circle than a cause and effect. That's what I'm hearing you say too. That not just that food becomes more abundant because not just that they're singing more because food is more abundant, but perhaps food is more abundant because they're singing more. So as each one happens, this is kind of that circular, what do you call it, effect?
Right.
Yeah, interesting.
It is interesting. And at least this story for me points to really the oneness of it all. Like it's another one of those stories where I go, okay, everything is connected, Yeah, I think that's fascinating. That's fantastic. I love that. And I love those whales. Love those animals. So
yep.
It makes me happy. So on to our next good news story.
With our good news guest.
With our good news guest. Straight to you from Fireside Chat on Friday night. Baby, come on in. Okay. He's on his way.
Do you know how hard it is to engineer your own program and then to, call up stuff?
Yes, I've done it a couple times. It is difficult.
Oh, you've done it.
I like having you as a producer.
Oh, is it okay? Ladies and gentlemen, our main event for the evening, it is scheduled for one fall for the kids. This is a story that's been out there for a while, but this is from the Good News Network, goodnewsnetwork.org. This Mexican priest performed as a wrestler to pay for orphanage that nurtured thousands. So if the headline to the story sounds oddly like a plot to the movie of the same name, Nacho Libre, starring Jack Black, well, that's because they're one and the same. Fray Tormenta was a masked wrestler that delighted crowds in Mexico Lucha Libre, which is, again, it's a very acrobatic form of pro wrestling. Beneath the mask, there was a man of God, a drug addict turned priest who wrestled purely to raise money for the orphanage. The story, though decades old, resurfaced and was told recently on a Spanish news outlet. Father Sergio was born in 1945. He was the second youngest of 18 children. And by the tender age of 11, Benitez was addicted to drugs and proceeded down a path of crime. And he said, I started when I was 11 or 12 in this country. Drugs have always been very present. I did everything, marijuana, cocaine, all kinds of good stuff. And a little after that, I started heroin. At the age of 20, though, that Benitez was staring down multiple murder charges after a friend of his in a gang turned up dead. Fortunately, an alibi of passing out in a bar elsewhere helped him to evade the slammer. And again, after that, he sought confession for reasons that only he can say. But even though he was turned away for his wickedness, he joined the seminary and became a priest in an order, studying Spanish and also in Italy to cement his faith. So basically what he did was, again, that to make extra money, what he would do is he would go out and he would work at these pro wrestling events under a mask. So no one knew who he was except the other wrestlers. But he would go and he would raise money. He says he ended up wrestling for 23 years, 1977 to 2000, traveling from town to town, elbow dropping, tombstoning, and double-legging his way to semi-stardom. And relying on his mask to hide his identity, he eventually revealed his double personality to officiate the wedding of a close wrestling colleague shortly before the opening of his orphanage, the object of his long flight at the turn of the millennium. So this children's home has seen over 2,000 children pass through its walls, many of whom have gone on to become doctors, civil servants, engineers, lawyers, and yes, even professional wrestlers. So that is my good news for today.
And good news it is. Thank you for sharing. And you have brought in Wayne. Hi, Wayne. How you doing?
Haven't seen you in a while.
Now hold it. Now, Wayne's from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. So I'm wondering, Wayne, are we going to have to pay an extra 25% to have you on the show? Are we going to pay a tariff? Answer me back on that, Wayne, because I'm concerned about the budget a little bit. You know, we love you and everything, but you know, if this is going to cost us an extra 25%, well, you know, I don't know. So yeah.
All right.
You guys have a great.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Oh. So good news abounds, and you know, there's so many people who do things like that. You know, that don't get a movie made about them or whatever, and it's just great. It's great to know that, you know, that human nature prevails.
I think that follows with our topic. That there's, you know, someone who's followed whatever that calling was and made a commitment to make it happen and figured out how to do it and wasn't concerned about necessarily being recognized some way. I mean, literally, he didn't want to be recognized for the extra work he was doing to make this thing happen.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah, that wasn't the goal.
Right.
All right. So the goal here today is for you to return, and we're going to talk about that still small voice. And Wayne, I know you hear that voice all the time. So stick around and share with us. And we'll be right back here on New Thought Media Network.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Spiritual Center, Ottawa. Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center. Begin Within Ministries. Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey. Unity of Savannah. And the Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
All right, and we are back on Rockin the Love. Ready to talk a little bit about that still small voice within. When you hear it, what it means to you, what does it say?
Sorry, I was looking the other way, folks. I lost my glasses. This happens. So the still small voice, what is it? Why is it? Where did it come from? Why is it referred to as that? I think probably throughout time, people have had the experience of having something come to them that, that partially maybe didn't make sense, but certainly they just sort of heard it and weren't even clear, like, what is it? Where did it come from? And what am I supposed to do with it?
Well, and is it?
And
Does it exist, or am I hearing things?
Did I make it up?
And Wayne actually put up there, the voices have good ideas. And I think that's very true, Wayne. I think we need to talk about that a little. The voices do have good ideas. And what are the voices? So what would you say, or do you think that the voice is intuition, or is it separate?
Well, let me go back to something I found about one of the places that's cited as a place where this has been written about first. And that was actually back in the context of God speaking to Elijah in the Old Testament. That Elijah was in the wilderness, and he was very tired from having dealt with a whole bunch of other prophets of Baal, the competing god, and all of that. And suddenly he hears God's voice in a very still, small voice. But this is only after God has sent wind, earthquake, and fire, which I find really fascinating. So once God has done all these very obvious things, the next thing to do is to try to get his attention by being quiet. And I am sure this is not the first person to have this experience or whatever, but this is a very interesting place, because a very interesting story, because here he is, and suddenly God doesn't have to be big and powerful and whatever to speak truth, to show truth, to invite people to move forward. And And I think that's kind of the thing with that still small voice for me, is it's that place inside, that place where spirit is residing inside, that brings forth something without hitting me over the head with a 2x4.
Interesting. Yes.
So that's one thought.
But tell me how it relates to intuition. Is intuition and the voice of God the same thing?
I think in general, yes. I think our intuition is an expression of spirit. It's that place of knowingness that we don't consciously know. And I think there's a lot of knowingness that we have that is part of our spirituality that we don't consciously know. And so when that comes forth and sort of breaks into our conscious mind and says, hey, here you go, I think that is spirit breaking in and saying, here is something that will help you now. And you know this, you just don't know that you know it.
Right. I think it's interesting that you say it that way, because it in some ways intuition is what we know without any proof.
Right.
We know without any we don't have to prove it. It's just something that we know. And so it's interesting. So when do we get connected to know that that's okay?
Well, I would even argue that it's something that we know without proof, but that the proof shows up later. The knowingness shows up. It's not so much that it's without proof, it's that we suddenly know something. We know this bit of information. We know we need to shift how we're being in relationship with a particular person. We know that things are going to change.
Right.
And maybe we don't know how, but we know they're going to change. We know, those
But
kinds
we
of
don't
things.
have proof in the moment.
We don't have proof in the moment.
So sometimes we sound, as Wayne said, batshit crazy. That we go, well, no, I've got to do this, or I've got to get, this is what's going to happen, or don't do this, or this will happen.
Right. I mean, I don't know, the multiple stories of people from 9/11 who didn't go to work.
Right.
In the Twin Towers that particular day, who said, it just felt like I wasn't supposed to go, or I really needed to take a day off, or whatever it was that wasn't, the place is going to blow up and I better not be there. It was just this knowingness that something needed to happen, and it didn't quite make sense because normally I go to work every day, that kind of thing.
Well, and not even that. Yeah, you just said it.
Yeah.
I mean, not even like a knowingness that something bad was going to happen.
Right. Not necessarily.
Just I really needing an almond croissant, and they weren't baked yet.
So I stayed.
They weren't out of the
I
oven.
decided to be late.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let myself be late. Yeah, that kind of a thing. And I think so that goes to the point of that still small voice. Is it always a voice? And or is it it's something beyond the voice. It's this knowingness that we can't even necessarily express, or we don't even understand. Why did I choose X, Y, and Z? I don't know, but I was very clear that was the choice I needed to make. Right? In the moment.
So, yeah, I think, how does one differentiate when to listen and when it's just a thought? Because, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Because for me, I have a lot of intuition that happens for me.
Right.
And it doesn't show up like, a light bulb doesn't go off and go, oh, this is an intuition or this is a thought. I also have a bunch of thoughts that pass through. And I don't always know that, like later on, I'm going to go, oh my God, I was just thinking that, or I was thinking I should have done this, because sometimes you just are in your world.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, I mean, maybe it should be, but for me, it's not all like, oh, this is being dictated by spirit. Let me follow. I know that probably surprises somebody.
Well, I think it's interesting because, what is the difference between just thinking stuff and having intuition? And I think sometimes, basically, intuition is something that breaks into our thoughts and becomes a thought. Becomes something that we're thinking without realizing that it's sort of pushing in. But I think part of the way we can see it is, where are we coming from? Because to me, if I'm coming from a place of fear and worry and doubt, then those thoughts coming from that place are probably not intuition in the same way. I if even if let's say I have an intuition that something is bad's about to happen and I need to change something, if that's coming because I'm always sitting around being worried about what's going to happen next, then that's probably my brain. But if it's something that shows up and says, hey, you need to be careful here, this is what's going on, then I think that can be that still small voice speaking to me.
So I think, yes. And so my ask is, so how do we focus more on that? How do you know? I mean, I think each of us do it in different ways, right? Like there are times when I know it's not me thinking.
You kind of go, where did that come from?
Yeah. And there's other times when I know it's not me thinking and I still want to argue with it and go, are you crazy? Which I do a lot of the time. But so how do we hone in on those things? How do we like increase our superpower of being able to listen?
Well, something that just struck me now as you were talking, and that's the idea that, we use this process called visioning, where there's also this process that many people use called visualizing. And visualizing is where we think about something in our brain, we see it, we figure out what it looks like by thinking it through. We do all these things, right? And that's sort of visualizing. We create a scene. And then visioning is where we listen to what's coming. We listen to what that small voice intentionally. And when I heard you say you argue with it, it made me think of that, because you always say you argue with your vision. That the information comes, and it's not necessarily logical. It's not necessarily anything else. If I'm visualizing, I'm logically putting all the pieces together so I can see what I want to come out with. So I can visualize myself, shooting those baskets, going right into the basket, that kind of stuff. And there's something good about all of that. But when we're visioning, we are receiving, and we're allowing ourselves intentionally to listen for that small voice, listen for that thing that's coming from inside, that's beyond our conscious knower.
Yeah. So I'm going to share a quote with you, or a thought by Shakti Goin. And she says that every time you don't follow your inner guidance, you feel a loss of energy, a loss of power, a sense of spiritual deadness. And I think that's a good key in some ways, because how many times do we not, you can call it whatever you want, but do we not follow a certain path? And then we're like, oh, I don't know why I didn't do this. I don't know why I didn't do that. This would, and you feel, It's almost like it's like being a kid at the stage when you know better
Uh-huh.
and you get caught and you're like, oh, I knew I shouldn't have done it.
I knew I was going to get
You
caught.
knew
This wasn't good.
Now they don't trust me. They this, they that. But it's that feeling of that heaviness of, I could have done it differently.
Right.
I should have done it differently. Not to shit on ourselves, but knowing in reality and in the depths of your being that there was another way. You were given the way.
So,
It's kind of like that joke, the one where
right.
he sends a plane, he sends a train, all those things. Go ahead.
So what I was thinking was in relationship, I think I found myself doing that at different times where I know, I feel it, I hear it, I know what my next step is. And I am too proud, angry, frustrated, stupid, whatever the word is in the moment that describes my being in that moment, to follow it. And afterwards I go, I didn't need to make this into whatever it's become now, because all I did was pushed aside that knowingness. Now, sometimes it's because I don't realize how important it is. And I don't think that that's really, excuse me, what's happening. But other times, I think I'm really clear that I hear it, I see it, I ain't doing that. That feeling. Do you ever have that? Have you ever had that? Yeah. And I think that's something we do in relationships with people because we're humans and we try to control the situation. So I want what I want. I want to be right. I want to be seen. I want to be heard. I want to be something.
Yeah. Well, yes. It's like, how often do we know the right way to do it and don't do it that way?
Right.
How often do we know the possibility and we don't do it that way? Oh, it's true.
Are things flooding your mind about the right way at the moment?
Well, it's just no. I mean, yes. I mean, in the world, it's exhausting. Because just going to a global perspective, and everybody in this time asking, what do I do? How do I make a difference? It's like that choosing to continue and be part of, collective groups that are doing a lot of work and making different things happen, or going, I'm tired. I don't know what to do. Let them do it. It'll change. I mean, I think, yeah, I think it's just so important, the listening.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think so, in that example with someone else and having those situations, I think they show up in a lot of other places where we hear that voice, whatever it is, and we dismiss it. We dismiss it because we don't like what it says. We dismiss it because we don't understand it. We dismiss it because it doesn't seem reasonable to us. And every time we dismiss that, we're dismissing the depth of spirit showing up and breaking into our consciousness. We're just pushing it down. And therefore, we miss the opportunity to really walk in the life that spirit is leading us in.
Well, and I also think that sometimes that the inner voice can get so deafening that we don't even hear it anymore. We choose something else. So we tune it out. So it's like clearing that space to really be a clear space to hear and to channel the divine on some level and to trust what that voice is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've shut it down to some degree. And what occurs to me is that we talk about spirit living through us and spirit living as us. And I think, when in order to move from that through to as, we have to start to believe the kind of stuff that's showing up and trust it. Because then we're just taking decisions and believe and knowing what we're doing versus trying to discern, well, is that spirit showing up or is that something else showing up? Or trying, doing that back and forth kind of process. And I never thought of it that way before until just now.
So as you say that, it's to me, it's like the voice, the still small voice, represents the truth. It's the truth. And so, how do we know if the truth is the truth? How do we?
Well, especially since it doesn't make sense sometimes.
Right.
It doesn't seem like that should be the truth or is the truth.
Well, or it's just hard to understand. It's,
right.
Hard to comprehend. The next moves when your head maybe somewhere else. But I think this is super important because I think that the truth will always move us towards love.
Mm-hmm.
It will always move us towards love. I think at the end of the day, as this show is about, at the end of the day, it's all about the love. And so I think if we're standing in integrity, and I think the challenge with that is that sometimes you may not be able to discern that it's moving you towards love because
right.
It may not be what you want.
Or it may not be my picture of love.
That's what I mean.
I think about this because when I was working through some of my prac studies years ago, and I think about how I was to become a practitioner. I was looking at this idea that there's only love. There's love. Everything comes from love, and I was going, this is not possible. But if I stepped back, I could look at the idea that love is a continuum. It's all a continuum. So somebody's version of love can be very different than my version of love or someone else's version of love based on where they are at that time. And it can be the most horrendous thing in appearance and yet come from some place of love, whether it's love of self or love of trying to protect someone else or love of whatever it is. Love of needing love and not understanding what it really is. It can end up out picturing as all kinds of things that we don't generally refer to as love. But in reality, what we're dealing with is the amount and understanding of love that the perpetrator of whatever we're talking about has or is in touch with. So then that means that when certain things come through us and say, do this, we go, that can't be love. That can't be right. And maybe it is because I'm just not understanding where it's coming from right now or what it's asking me to do.
Yeah. And so learning to listen, and I mean, we're always listening from our own lens anyway.
Right.
So learning to listen and discerning, how we do that in a healthy way. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think I'm thinking more about it in this conversation than usual, so how would you suggest that someone go about growing that muscle?
Well, I think we have to give ourselves opportunities to hear, which I think means, we need to be quiet, which goes to some of those spiritual practices of meditation, of prayer, those times when we are available, visioning, when we're available to what may come to us, as opposed to us trying to create what's going out, right?
Mhm.
And I think that is one of the ways that can happen. I think it's also observing when these things come up, and observing, even if we choose not to follow it, what happens thereafter, and if and allowing ourselves to go, oh, that might have turned out very differently had I done whatever, or had I said whatever, and give ourselves permission to not be doing exactly the right thing, but to be willing to learn from what it is we've done, and what it is we've said, what it is, how we've interacted, whatever the thing is.
Well, and I think also it reminds me of like, uh, when I've read books or about like using your psychic eye or your psychic abilities or empathic things. I think one of the things is making space for it. It's like cleaning house, right? Clearing your head. And maybe not only, I know people sometimes have a challenge with meditation or things like that, and, you know, which is, very intentional or can be. But I think also just taking some time, like, to be still, to stop and be still, and to see what's mine to do now. Like, instead of, if every night you eat dinner and then you turn on the TV and you watch your shows, don't turn on your TV. Sit there for a minute and see, what am I called to do. Be, if you question, the answers will come. you know what am I called to do? What should I do now? What's next? Just giving that space, or or going to the grocery store and not going on the mission of, I'm going to the vegetables and then I'm getting cans of soup and then I'm getting meat. Go and walk in the aisles and see where you're guided to go. I mean, because there are days when we go to the grocery store and we go up and down every aisle, and there are other days when we don't.
Right.
And generally we don't talk about it. It's just whatever's called for. But I mean, just little things like that, and being aware in those moments, being aware of your choices and beginning to listen. It's like the turn right, turn left, those kind of things. Don't turn right, but wait, I turn right here every day. This is how I go. Like, just turn right. Let it go and see where that still small voice leads you.
I think the other thing I heard in there was giving yourself a beat, because I think our mind and our ego wants to control things and know that it's right. I can speak that for myself. I will say that is the case with mine, I think. So if I jump as soon as I have a thought, then I preclude any options that may be available to me from coming forth in my understanding. Right? And so, like you said, if you sit down to watch TV every night, just sit down and don't watch TV for 5 minutes and see what comes up. Doesn't mean you have to do anything different. It may mean that you sit there for 5 minutes and then watch TV. It just means give it a minute. And what I thought of in that was, in the situation of dealing with someone else, or being in an argument with a spouse or whatever, to go, when something happens, is to go take a second and just breathe and listen for a second before whatever it is that's ready to come out of your mouth comes out.
Can you say that one more time?
No, it would be too painful.
Sorry, marital moment, everybody. Yeah, I think breathing is key, and I think I think that we are in society in such a habitual setup that we've all learned. Oh no, I got to do this, I got to do there, I got to get here, I've got to. And I think some of it is letting go of that. And I'm going to call the still small voice. You know, some people are going to call it God. Some people are going to call it something else. But today I'm going to call it, because I may be that someone on another day, but today I'm going to call it, it's really like just checking in on your inner wisdom. And I think we've gone away from that. We've stopped listening because we're listening to what other people or other things or TV or whatever are telling us, or it's the way I've always done it, or it's the way my mother did it,
Or we believe there's not time to listen, to take that time to pay attention. There's too much happening. I have to move forward. I've got things to do. You know, boom. A goes into B. That's it. It's done. You know, that's the only solution I see. So that's the solution we're going to do. You know, bam. And then we miss out on the possibilities, because the possibilities are beyond our imagination if we open ourselves up to them. And that's part of the still small voice, is bringing us possibility that we never thought of. That, you know, and I think that still small voice, like you said, is, you know, it can be described as spirit, but it is that inner knowing, which in my opinion is spirit,
obviously.
you know, or Jiminy Cricket, depending on how you look at it. I mean, you know, because he's a voice of consciousness.
All right. well, on that note,
where were you in those movies? Come on.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I was just taken in by our dog that has decided to face the wall and observe the art or something. Anyway, all right. So I think this is interesting stuff, and it's definitely something to contemplate. And I want to just remind you all that there are so many good programming.
I'm getting something. She's not willing to be on camera without proper compensation, and so she's yeah, that's what's happening.
She got the memo. Oh, Brzezinski turned down her check request. Okay, it's okay, Sachi. There'll be another time. Anyway, there's so many good shows happening on New Thought Media Network. Make sure to check in on Fireside Chat on Friday nights. Don't miss Girls Behaving Metaphysically tomorrow at 3 p.m. Mountain Time. And it's going to be a fun show with girls behaving very metaphysically. More than two girls.
Well,
that's intriguing.
And they'll be drinking on the show. That's good.
They'll be drinking on the show, even if it's only me.
The other thing is there's our music cafe, Solid Grounds, is aired on Friday nights right after Fireside Chat. So there's a variety of different things, some talk shows, some prayer shows, some music shows. There's all different kinds of stuff on New Thought Media. There
is, and we'd love it if you supported that by watching, by donating, by telling your friends, by having a watch party. Do whatever you can to get the word out, because it's all about the love, y'all. That's New Thought Media, and we are needing love more now than ever. And I just want to give myself a shout out, because I'm very impressed with how my hat matches our media things going by. I think the purple is astounding, you know, and I want to thank Wardrobe for the budget, and just love yourself and love everybody, because it's time.
It's time.
And we'll see you next week at the same time. Thank you, Wayne, for speaking up and letting us know that Canada is in the house. Here's to the 51st state. Just lying. Okay. We'll see them next week.
We'll see them next week. We are going to continue to rock in the love. We encourage you to do the same, and especially rock it with yourself and be gentle. Blessings.
Bye, everybody.